candidate we're going to hear from is Donald Mottern. He is a Democratic candidate for Alabama State Senate District 11, representing communities across St. Clair, Talladega, and Shelby counties. Born in Mobile and raised in the Birmingham suburbs, Donald graduated from high school in Alabaster before earning his bachelor's degree, along with 2 minors from the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. He has since lived in Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, and now calls Shelby County home. With a background in local journalism, Donald's campaign is rooted in a belief that Alabama deserves leadership focused less on political theater and more on the real issues facing working families. Infrastructure, public safety, healthcare access, government transparency, individual liberty, and the basic responsibility of making government work for the people it serves. He has been a vocal advocate for a mandatory statewide dam and safety inspection program, stronger protections for immigrants, expanded transparency in law enforcement, protection of civil liberties, expanded health care, and new revenue streams that can strengthen Alabama's future without placing more burden on our working families. Above all, Donald believes that Alabama is not helpless. It is not a punchline, and it is not destined to remain at the back of the line. Please welcome Donald Mottern.
Good evening, everyone. For as long as I can remember, everyone I have ever known and anyone I have ever met has seemingly been in agreement about one thing: that Alabama has been in a bad way for a very long time. Now, I want to make myself perfectly clear as I begin. I love my home state. I was born here and I have lived here for nearly my entire life. But loving Alabama does not require me to ignore her problems or her numerous shortcomings that are the direct result of a negligent leadership and a government obsessed with short-term solutions. For decades, we have been asked to accept a state government that treats poverty as inevitable, healthcare deserts as normal, crumbling infrastructure as someone else's problem, and civil liberties as something only worth defending when they belong to those in power. And I know wholeheartedly that Alabama can do better than this. And I am running for the Alabama State Senate because I believe the people of this state also know that. The problem is not that Alabama has ever lacked good people. The problem is that Alabama has had too many leaders who would rather manage decline than work hard to build a future. So tonight I want to talk about what kind of future we can all build together. Because the truth is simple. Alabama will never cut its budget into prosperity. We cannot distract our way out of this mess. And we cannot punish our own people for the sins of their government. We have to build. And we have to start by shoring up the foundation and protecting the freedoms that define all of us. The freedoms of speech, worship, and conscience. The freedom from unnecessary government interference. And the freedom to live your life without politicians thinking they know better than you. That means I will fight against government overreach in our classrooms, our libraries, our communities, and in our private lives. Montgomery should not dictate what local libraries can provide, make teachers afraid to teach or our students afraid to learn. And civil liberties should never depend on who you are, where you were born, how you worship, who you love, or whether people in power find you to be politically convenient. And that includes immigrants and their families. We cannot call ourselves a free people while cheering on masked agents, secretive policing, the terrorization of families, or our neighbors being treated as less than the human beings they are. We cannot honestly preach faith, liberty, and family values while supporting policies that rip families apart, dehumanize the stranger, and write fear into law. As a proud American, I support the immigration and the promises inscribed within our founding documents. And while I support secure and functional borders, I also support making legal immigration easier, faster, and more humane. I support due process. I support accountability for local law enforcement that both roots out the bad actors and protects those of them operating in good faith. And I demand a state government that refuses to participate in cruelty for the sake of political expedience. Now, I hold those core freedoms at the heart of my ideology, but I admit that they alone are not enough if people cannot afford to live, cannot afford to raise a family, and cannot access basic health care. In 1980, 45 of Alabama's rural counties had hospitals providing obstetrical services to 80% of the state's rural population. Today, that number has plummeted to only 15 counties. Today, nearly 90% of women of reproductive age in rural Alabama now live more than 30 minutes away from any form of hospital-based obstetric care. Even our most economically developed counties are struggling and actively failing to provide maternity care to mothers who have no choice but to go without or to drive unacceptable distances. Our hospitals are all closing at staggering rates. 7 of our rural counties have been identified as now having no hospitals at all, and 64 of Alabama's 67 total counties are also now classified as ambulance deserts. What we have here is not a healthcare system. It is an outright crisis that has evaporated many of the gains we made in the last half of the 20th century. I, like many of you, followed the story of 17-year-old Juliana Barrientos, a resident of Pell City who has been fighting for her life against a diagnosis of osteosarcoma. Like countless others, our current system denied life-saving treatment for Juliana, and it was not until she received a mass outpouring of support and public outrage on her behalf that the denial was overturned. Now, it remains to be seen what the cost of that delay for her may be, but I, like all of you, pray for her and hope she makes a resounding recovery. But you know, the media reported that story as if it was a success of the community banding together. I'm here to say that it is an outright tragedy that someone in the United States of America had to rely on the media and public outrage to be given a fighting chance at survival. No amount of GoFundMe pages or special reports is ever going to solve this. If we want Alabama to have a strong future, we must repair our access to health care. That means supporting rural hospitals and clinics, bringing in new doctors and nurses, preventing more hospital closures, treating mental health and addiction care like the medical issues that they are, and recovering the grounds we have lost. It also means recognizing in the government that health care is not just a personal issue, it is an economic one. A community without health care cannot grow the way that it should. It cannot attract young families the way it should. A community that cannot afford preventative care becomes sicker, less stable, and less productive until it no longer exists at all. Families will suffer here as long as one diagnosis dismantles their entire life. And here's the truth. We can begin part of this recovery at the state level, and without placing more burden on working families in Alabama right here and right now. We can at the very least accept federal funds and expand Medicaid, which would dramatically reduce the number of Alabamians that are currently trapped in coverage gaps and denied their care. Now, we must also take steps to preserve the infrastructure and environment already around us. Alabama remains the only state in this country without a mandatory statewide dam safety and inspection program. We have thousands of dams across this state, hundreds which are classified as having high hazard potential. A vast majority of them are all privately owned, aging past their design dates and operating with little to no oversight. And our dams are just one aspect of this state's infrastructure that needs radical attention. Emergency preparedness is lacking. water quality is dramatically dropping throughout this state. Roads, bridges, and public services are all coming up short across the board. And our river locks are also failing. It might not be as fun to talk about, but we cannot build Alabama's future if we are not maintaining her. And we cannot keep her beautiful as long as those in Montgomery take this state's power to regulate its industries out at the kneecaps. But to address these problems and many of the others, we will also need new revenue streams. We can fund this recovery by modernizing Alabama's economy and finally getting serious about industries that other states have already embraced, while Montgomery sits on the sidelines pretending that their stubbornness is a virtue. That starts with a public referendum and amendment regarding the potential formation of a responsible, regulated lottery that can help support education, public safety, infrastructure, and health care without raising any of our taxes. For decades, Alabama has allowed our money to cross state lines. To the tune of at least $700 million a year, our people drive to Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, and Mississippi to buy tickets that fund another state's schools. It funds their roads and it funds their programs. These are funds that could instead go toward supporting our future. If adults in our state are already participating elsewhere, then we should have the wherewithal to regulate it here, keep that revenue here, and put it to work here. We also need to be honest about cannabis and hemp. Our state's current approach has failed in all estimations. Prohibition has not made us safer, healthier, or stronger. It wastes tens of millions of taxpayer dollars a year, damages lives, overburdens our courts and jails, and denies Alabama the chance to build countless regulated industries that can support individuals across this economy and in all walks of life. Embracing this one plant alone would create jobs, generate massive tax revenue, reduce needless criminalization, and allow Alabama to stop wasting money on failed policy. We should be preparing for the future in this state and embracing it, like we used to, and just as we did successfully with the space program. And that is the pattern we have got to break here. My campaign is not about pretending Alabama's problems are small, because they are not. But I refuse to accept that they are unsolvable. We can protect civil liberties for all and maintain our public safety. We can expand health care without crushing working families. We can create new revenue and drive new progress. And we can protect our waters, roads, bridges, dams, hospitals, schools, and our communities. And we can all finally say that enough is enough. Because if those in power have had 30 years to fix these problems and done nothing, what makes us think they will finally start if given another pull? These people are never going to build what they themselves helped to tear down. I want the people of Alabama to remember that we are not a punchline, that we are not doomed to accept less, that we are not a dumb people, that this state can be better and have better than what it has been given because it used to be. Now I'm asking for the chance to fight for a state government that respects your rights, protects your family, strengthens your community, and builds a future worthy of the people who call our state their home. A future where Alabama stops falling behind and finally starts leading again. Thank you.